In this video we'll show you how to set up Python with Flask and MongoDB. The first thing you need to do is check if you already have Python installed in your computers. Therefore, go to the terminal and just type py, and in my system I don't have it, so we need to install Python. To do that, let's go to the browser and let's search for Python. In this case I will choose python.org. I'm going to download the latest version, it's 3.8.2. Click on download, and once it's done downloading, just click on this tab and the installation will pop up. Now make sure that you have this checked, add Python 3.8 to path, because this will allow us to just go ahead and type py from the terminal, and we will need that. So when you are installing it, make sure that this is selected. Now let's select the install now, and this will pop up an agreement. We say yes, and the installation process takes place. Depending on the computer, will take a few minutes. Nothing especially being installed here, it's just Python. I will show you how we can check if this has been installed successfully. Let's give it a few more seconds. Alright, so the setup was successful. We can close this window, and in the terminal now we can type py, and then we have Python 3.8.2 installed in our computers. Let's just exit that and clear it. So Python is set up. Now we need to install MongoDB. Before you even go to MongoDB, I strongly suggest that you do this. Go to your C drive, and inside your C drive create a new folder, call it data, and inside the data folder create an inner folder and call it DB. This is the default place where MongoDB will set up your database. Obviously you can change it at some point using a command that is a flag, that is --db path. But if you do this, create a data folder with a DB folder in it, MongoDB will set up your database inside this DB folder. So that's set up now. Let's go to Mongo. And the way you can check if Mongo is installed, I will just select the right click on the bar here and choose Task Manager. And inside the Task Manager, you can go to Services. Just clicking one of these services, just one click. So you put the focus on this window and press the letter M. And you can see that I do not have Mongo running in my computer, or else I will see a service called MongoDB popping up here. So we just minimize this window. I will go ahead and download MongoDB. The link that you want to choose is not this one, that is for an ad. It will take you to a different link. Even though it says here mongodb.com, it takes you somewhere else. So what you do is you select this one, mongodb.com. If you look at the bottom bar here, it says mongodb.com. Go to Software, Community Server. I'm going to select the current version for Windows, and this MSI is the package that will install everything that I need in my computer. Click download. It will take a few seconds to download. Now I don't want to pause the video here because I might get into some windows in between, so I need to show you the whole thing just in case that I skip something while I'm recording. Maybe it takes a couple of minutes in your machines to download. This is almost done, and now I will just click on this icon here, this button, and this will start the installation of Mongo in my computer. I will select next, agreement yes, check it, next, do a complete installation, and don't touch anything there, everything is done for you by default. So just say next, and we're going to install MongoDB Compass, leave it checked. This will allow us to have a user interface so we can interact with the database. We're not going to use this heavily in these tutorials, but leave it there. Next. Install, and this will take some minutes. I get this, we say yes. While we're waiting, please guys, don't forget to subscribe and get notifications. This is just one video of a series of videos. And besides, when you subscribe, what is important is not that you just watch these videos, but as soon as there's an update for Mongo or for Python with Flask, I will keep you updated. So you have subscribed, you get your notifications. I will always check weekly, basically check for updates, and then I will make new videos so you are always up to date with security patches and with information about the technology we're using. So this will take a few minutes. I will pause the video now because maybe it's too long, and then I will tell you what has happened in between. So this pops up right away. Mongo has been installing. I haven't clicked on anything in between. Compass is installing as well. Compass is running automatically, and it says that it has completed setting it up. Alright, if in between you got a window that you have to click yes, I guess you should just click on it. I didn't get anything in between this installation. I will say finish now. And Compass is running. If you didn't get Compass running automatically, you can just go to the Windows search and search for Compass. When you click on this button, you will get to this window here. So let's check if everything is running fine. We should be able to connect to the database. And now we have these three databases created for us. Don't ever touch them. Those are the default for Mongo. If we look at the task manager, right click task manager, now you can see that MongoDB is running as a service in my machine. And that means that every time we restart the computer, Mongo will be running automatically, the server. And that's pretty good. That's exactly what we needed. We don't need Mongo anymore. So we can just minimize it. And let me just check if we need anything else. That's everything we need for the setup of the system. Besides all that, please make sure that you have Visual Studio Code. And in the next video, I will show you how we can create a document inside our database. We will also be building the database in the next video. Thank you. In this video, we'll show you how to create documents using Python, Flask, and MongoDB. I will try to get into as many errors as possible so you learn how I debug those mistakes. If you have opened the terminal already, please close it and reopen it, just in case that the following commands are not going to be refreshed in your machine. So go to the terminal, and what you are going to write now is pip pip list. Maybe you get a yellow warning that is telling you to run a command. Copy that command and paste it and run it. If you want to do that, you don't have to. So go to your computer and create a new folder manually. I have already done that, so I will go somewhere in your machine. It doesn't matter where. So I have created this Mongo folder. Once you have created the Mongo folder, you can navigate to that path from the terminal. So you could just type cmd, and this will open a new terminal pointing to the Flask folder. Because I'm not inside Mongo, you can also just open Mongo and type in the address bar cmd, and this will open the terminal pointing directly to Mongo. However you want to do that, it is fine. So in this case, I will just close the other terminal and stay with this one. In this terminal, we are going to create a virtual environment inside the Mongo folder. At the moment, this folder is empty. You can see there are no files. You can also go and open VS Code. I can show you this here. And from VS Code, point to the Mongo folder. So go to File, Open Folder, and open this Mongo directory. Once you have done that, I have this side by side so you can see the differences. What we're going to do is we're going to install the virtual environment, and this is just a place where we can add packages, and these packages will not affect other parts of our Python programs. So you run this by doing py. If you have different versions of Python, maybe you want to do py space -3, that will be version 3, but in my computer I only have Python version 3, so I just have to do py. Most likely you only have that version. If you have other versions of Python, just uninstall them. And now we're going to create a virtual environment. You have to have the flag -m, and then we say vm, and we do a dot. This command just says Python, create a virtual environment inside this directory. If you watch other tutorials or other blogs that you read from, maybe they have a different way to do this. This is the way I have learned to do. As soon as I click enter, you can see that these folders appeared, and now I am inside my virtual directory, my virtual environment. This is not enough to have it running as an environment, because if I do a pip install now, I will be installing the packages globally, so I need to activate this environment as a virtual environment. If you look at the scripts folder, we have something called activate. So from the terminal, we say cd scripts, so we move to the scripts folder, and then we just say activate. When I click on enter, you will see that this changes a little bit. So just hit enter, and now you can see that I am inside the virtual environment called Mongo, and whatever I install via the pip command will be installed only inside this environment. It will not affect any other parts of the system. Since we're going to do Flask, we're going to install Flask. This runs and takes a little bit of time. Let me just put this right there so you can see the whole thing. And now we have a little warning. It says that I'm using pip version 19, however version 20 is available. And this is the warning I was telling you about. Do you want to install it? We don't have to, but we can. Just copy this command. If you're not seeing that, it's because you already have the latest version. And then I will just paste it and click enter. This will install the latest version of pip. It doesn't really affect your systems. So now it has been successfully installed. I am inside Mongo scripts. Now I can just go out of Mongo scripts, go up to the just Mongo folder, and it's here where I'm going to be running my Flask application. Let's go ahead and create a file, call it server.py, and the first thing we're going to do is a quick test. We're just going to say print. We're going to print the letter X, save it, and now we're going to run py server.py. Remember that I went up one level to the Mongo folder. And now we see the letter X, and that means that we're pointing to that folder correctly. What we can also do is we can do a pip list again to see which libraries we have already installed. And you can see that all these libraries were installed when I did pip install Flask. So this affects only the Mongo virtual environment. This is what we needed. Now we can go ahead and create our server. To do this, the first thing we need is to say that we're going to import from Flask. We're going to take Flask, and this is just the main file I save. And right away, always do this right away. I will do a py server.py. So you can see that I have a syntax error. Let me show you this. And it's in line number 1. And this is exactly what I want to show you via my tutorials. Not just the perfect solution, but I want to show you how I solve the errors that I get into my application. So to solve this, you can see that I have a typo. It doesn't tell me match, it just says from. and then I would say import Flask. Save it, and I run it right away again. So this is the advantage of running your application constantly. Once we have this, let me just make some spaces. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. I think there are 10 spaces in here. And what I will do is I will create just the server, so it's going to listen to a specific port, and then I can just run it and test it from Postman. So let's do this. Let's create an instance of the app application, and this will be Flask underscore underscore name underscore underscore save. Right away, test it again. I know this is annoying to test it constantly, but it is the way to do an application. You can see I have a typo, I fix it. You get the idea, right? 1 line at a time, 2 lines, 3 times at a time, no more than that. Once I have this application set up, I need to run the server. So we just do the typical if name equals main. You can use single quotes or double quotes, it doesn't matter. Then we're going to run the application. We're going to be listening to port 80, and we're going to set the debug to be true. This is just to get error messages a little bit more understandable. Now let's run this again. Well, now you can see that the server is running. It's running on localhost, and it is using port 80. Some of you will have issues running this on port 80, so you can just change the port to a different port, something that's not above 65,535, and that will do the job. So let's say 5,5555 if you want it. That will be okay. Save it again, and this will restart automatically. Now this is not enough. We need the route that will allow us to create documents in our Mongo database. So let's create a decorator. Let's call it app.route, and we are going to say that this is going to be the main entrance for a create users. We want to create users, and since we want to create the users, we're going to pass the data via a method, and the method that we're going to use is post. This is the syntax, so you say that the method is post, and this is plural because you can use several methods if you want, and then you will have to parse them accordingly. For now, we don't care about that. So what we need to do is just be able to create the user, and we have to define a function. Let's call it create user. This function for now will just return the letter X. Save it. Hopefully this will restart automatically. And now we're going to go to Postman, create a new request. This is going to be a post. It's going to point to localhost, and the path will be /users. Let's see, we get the letter X. Yes, we do. So it is working fine. Now that we have done that, let's go back to VS Code. And we need to always do the following. You need to connect to the database first of all. And to do that, follow this advice. Always put the connection in a try except. Never forget this part. This will save you from a lot of mistakes. We're going to try to connect, but to connect to Mongo, we need a different package. We need to install, so therefore I will just Control CC several times. And now we're going to install pip list, just so you see what we have so far. We're going to install a library called PyMongo. So we say pip install PyMongo. Takes a little bit of time. It gets the library. It is successfully installed. So if we do pip list again, you can see that I have PyMongo installed. Since this is installed, now I can do import PyMongo. Save it, and let's just move the import up there. Save it, and let's rerun the server. Now I have an error in the indentation, and that's fine. If you want to avoid these errors just for testing, you can do pass and pass, and I think that will do the job, right? But you don't want this. Now we're going to connect to Mongo. So we're going to create a variable called Mongo, and this will be PyMongo, and we're going to use a Mongo client from this library, Mongo client. This can just be shrink a little bit there. This Mongo client takes several arguments. The host is going to be localhost. We're going to be using the port. The default port for Mongo is 27017. And I want to show you something that you will not find in most tutorials. What happens if the connection fails? Well, you can have the third argument, which is the server selection, and I think it's called timeout in milliseconds. And this will be 1 millisecond of 10 milliseconds. You can just do 1 second, right? That will be 1000. So this will allow us to catch the exception, and the exception will get in here. But this will not work automatically. To really have it working, you need to do the following. You need to point to the Mongo variable that we just created, and then you need to get the server underscore info. This is going to trigger the exception if it cannot connect to the database. If cannot connect to DB. So that will do the exception. So if we get to the exception, we can just print error cannot connect to DB. This is really important. You can actually pause the application. In this exception, you can send an email to the administrator saying that something is off with the database. Let's save it. Let's kill the server and rerun it again. Now this is working fine. It's connected to Mongo, so it is doing its job. If we go to Compass, we can just refresh. There's no database there. We're going to create the database there in a while. So now that we're connected, the next thing we need to do, once this client is pointing to Mongo, we are going to create a database variable, and this DB will be the connection to the Mongo client and the database that we want to use. This database does not exist at the moment, so I'm just going to invent it. I will call it company. You can call this whatever you want. So I save it. This restarted automatically. Let's go to Compass and reload. You don't see the database because I have not written anything to the database, and therefore it's not displayed in Compass at the moment. So now we have to go to the route and start creating the user, the individual user here. To do this, again, I cannot recommend enough, always a try except, and now we're going to just create an exception as EX. This will allow us to print the exception in the screen. If we get into issues, we can read the exception and debug it. So what we're going to try is first, let's take it one step at a time. I'm going to create a user, and the user is just a JSON object. The name will be the letter A, and the last name will be the letter B. Let's do AA as the last name. Eventually, this data will be replaced with the data that we pass from Postman. Whenever we have a connection to the database, we're going to get a response, and this will be the database, and we're going to insert inside the users collection. This DB is pointing to company. So I'm pointing to company now. Then I say inside the company database, point to the collection called users, which does not exist at the moment, but this will create the collection automatically. And we're going to insert the user JSON object. The response will contain some data, and just for you to know what we want to send back, it will be nice to send the ID that Mongo gave to this user to the client. So to see what keys, to see what properties we can use from the DB response, we can always create a for loop, and then we're going to say for attribute in DB response, and then this is going to be using the dir keyword, so it shows me all the attributes, and I will just print attr. So let's save it. Now we have restarted the server. Let's move to Postman and send the request. Now you can see what we get in here. We have the error. The view did not return a valid response. That's fine. I did not respond to the client correctly. And let's see, we get an ID somewhere here. No, I don't see any ID. So let's try to debug this. Let's go back to VS Code, and this exception is not being triggered explicitly because I don't see it. So let's do a print, and I'm going to print some stars, and then I will just duplicate this to see if I get exception somewhere in between. Let's go to Postman, trigger this again. You can see I do not see the stars, nowhere to be seen. So this is really hard to debug. And what I do see, it is that I never got to these stars, and that's why I'm not triggering the exception. So what I'm seeing here is basically that this print attr is all this list that you see here, all these elements. The element that we need is the inserted ID. That's what's important for us. So I will copy it. And now what I will do is I will comment this out. And I'm just going to create a print again. And this print will be the DB response dot the inserted ID. Save it. This reloads automatically. Send a request. We don't have any response just yet for this client, but let's see if we get somewhere here the ID right there. So you see, it's very hard to spot the specific places that the code is outputting stuff, but with a little bit of reflection about what you guys see here, you will find out that that's the ID. Now the rest, it's because we're not sending anything back to the client. We're going to do that now. Let's go to VS Code, and we're going to create a professional response. To do that, we're going to return, and I want to use the response object from Flask. So I will actually from Flask import the response as well. So we say return the response. I will pass 3 arguments to this response. The first will be the response data. For now, let me just hard code a simple letter X, just that. Then I'm going to pass the status, which will be a 200 because I didn't have any mistakes. Everything ran as expected. And then I will just pass the MIME type, which will be, in this case, the application JSON. So I'm telling the client that I will pass some data. Everything went fine, that's in status 200, and I'm going to pass data that is JSON. But this is not JSON, so I want to pass data that looks like JSON, it's actually JSON. So my idea is to pass a message, and the message will say user created, and I want to pass the ID of the user that was created. In this case, the ID is inside this variable, and this ID, I want to save you from a lot of headaches. This ID is a long ID and it is text. So therefore you need to put this as text, but this will not work because you need to inject this inside the double quotes. Therefore you create an F string and then you just do the curly braces around the variable. Before we run it, or let's run it so we can see the bugs, the errors taking place. I will go to Postman, send a request, and we have this message ID popping up. This is not JSON, right? If you look at the headers, it says that it is expecting to get JSON, it is going to set JSON, but it actually sent the message ID. So we need to fix it. This has to be JSON, and Flask has a nice function called JSONify. I'm not going to use it because it changes the order of my keys, so we just import JSON. If you like JSONify, just do it, but I will just import JSON. And what I will do is I will just JSON.dump the string, and inside parentheses, let me just break this into lines so you can see the object. And this will be the JSON dump s, right? So the response will send this message, and let me just do this like so. The status and the MAM type. Save it, go to Postman, click on send, and now we get that the user has been created, and this was the ID, and this is using a post. We can also check Compass, just reload. We have the company database created. We have users 5, yeah, because I have been testing the application several times, and these are my users. I will just delete them manually from Postman, delete, before I get too many users. And I will delete the last one. So the blueprint has been working fine, and the last step we need to do for this tutorial is from Postman we need to pass the name and the last name. To do that, since this is a post, we can go and look at the body from data. This is the important thing for us. We're going to create a key called name. We're going to pass the letter B, and the last name will be BB. Do not send the request just yet. Let's go to VS Code. And now we're going to say that we want to get the request from the form, and we want to get the key, the input field called name, and the exact same thing we'll do for the last name. Let me break this into lines so you can see the whole thing. The last name will be the request, form, and then the key that I called last name. When we send this, let's spot the bug. I'm going to do this in purpose again. I will just send it, and we have a bug. And the bug here, it's because, I mean, if I was able to zoom out a little bit so you could make some sense out of it. Well, the issue that we have is that it's trying to get a name and a last name, but it's not using the correct library for it. So you can just go ahead and read all of it. I'm just telling you the answer already. So what I will do is we go to, let me just zoom it again as it was before. Let's go to VS Code. And this request is not part of my imported packages. So I will say that I want to import from Flask the response and also request. Save it. The server restarted automatically. Let's send the request. And now we say that the message has been created, and this is the ID. Let's go to Compass. Let's just refresh. And now we can see that we have the new user inserted. All right, this is enough for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, I will show you how we can read not from Compass, but from Flask. In this tutorial, I will show you how to read documents with Python Flask and MongoDB. Let's go to VS Code. We have previously connected to the database, and we have inserted or created documents in the database. For this tutorial, we're going to create a new route. You can do this anywhere you want. We're going to create a decorator, call it app.route, and this is going to point to users. This is going to be a methods, and this is going to be a get. Let's define the function. You can give any name you want. In this case, I will call it get some users. You will never give the whole list of users to any application, because imagine that you have 100,000 users. You will never pass all of them. The first thing we need to do is try except. And we're going to get this exception as EX. We're going to print exception, and we're just going to just show EX. This will show in the terminal, but we also need to pass the response back to the client. So we're going to return response. This has been used in the previous video. And we are going to just copy the response that we had here. Just copy it. If you don't have this, you can just pause the video and copy it manually. And this will be return. Sorry, I make a mistake. I didn't copy the whole thing. I need to copy all of it. So if we have an issue in the get some users, we're going to get to the exception, and then we're going to return a response. It's going to be JSON. We're going to send a message, and this will be a message that says cannot read users. And it's not going to be a 200 because that's an okay response. It's going to be a 500 because that's an internal server error. And we don't need ID because we're not going to create any users in this response. So I can just put this in one line. In your computer, you can most likely do all these 3 lines in one. So you will save a lot of space and the code will be much more readable. Let me do it. Even though you cannot see the whole line, you get the idea how the code should look like. So this is the exception. This is going to be passed to Postman, and this is going to be shown in the terminal. My terminal is running right here. In the try, we're going to read the data that the database will return to us. So I'm just going to call it data, and this will be db, that's the company database, .users.find. Find is a command that will give us all the users. Let me return data for now, so we fix all the mistakes. If you do this, let's go to Postman. Let's create a new route. This will be the get route. So we say localhost /users. When we send this, we're going to have the internal server error. That was the 500 that I sent. And you can go ahead and read all the data that it is telling you. But there are many things that we have to fix. If we look at the exception right here, it says that the return type must be a string, a dictionary, or a tuple. But I'm not sending any of those. I'm actually sending a cursor. And the reason I'm sending a cursor, it is because this data variable is a cursor pointing to the database. The easiest trick you can do is you can just say list, and this will convert this into a list. So let's print data, save it. This should restart automatically. If it doesn't restart automatically, you can click on this window and hit enter. And now we're going to send the request again. Let's see what we get out of the print. Over here, hard to spot, right? Very hard to spot. But right here, you can see that I have an object ID. I lost it. Lost it here. And have an array with the object ID, with the name and the last name. So this is what I would like to pass to Postman. Let's do this again. Now in the request, in the response, I am going to pass this data to Postman. So I'm not going to just return data. I'm going to make it a little bit more professional. I will select all these, copy and paste it. So again, it's just one line, but I will break it into lines. So the response is going to send, I will just fake the array with the elements. It's just going to send an array with an ID. For now it's just 1. I'm just faking this. This will be the date in a second, but I can see that we will get into a bug, and that's why I need to do this one step at a time. So this is going to be the response, and I can just close it right there. Save it. Let's go to Postman again and send a request. Now you can see that this is the ID and the name and the last name that I should be passing. But when I do this and then I pass data right instead of this array, we are going to get into a new bug. Send it. And we went into the exception. It says that it cannot read users. This is really, really tricky to spot because we went right here. It cannot read users. We went to the exception. If you pay attention to the print EX, you can see that we will have the exception right here. Object of type object ID is not JSON serializable. And if you know JSON, and you should know JSON, that's why you're watching this tutorial, you can see that the key is called ID and the value starts with object ID, having this as the value of the object ID. This is not valid JSON because this is not text, that's an object. And it took me quite a while to get to this. So what I do, I mean, it's fine, it's easy to find a solution on the internet. It's hard to understand why you're doing what you're doing. So what you have to do is you need to import a little library. It's called basin.objectID, and we're going to import from, so this is the import object ID. When you import this, then you can use the object ID as text. You will see how I do that. First of all, let's save it. Click enter there. I don't have any box now. And what we will do in the users get, now we just have to convert the ID that you saw before that was an object into a string. So what I will do is I'm going to create a loop, and I'm going to say that inside this data I have individual user objects. So we say for user in data. And what I will do is I will convert this fancy object ID that I showed you before into a text ID. So I will say that the user underscore ID equals the string. I will convert the user underscore ID. So what I'm saying is go to this object ID that was really weird and convert it just to an ID. So I'm going to save this and test it, and then I will solve something for you that you might have in mind now. Send, I get the ID, I get the name and the last name for the inserted BB that we had before. Now this cannot be overwritten, don't even think about it, leave it as underscore ID. It's part of your API, don't think about changing it. Now how about this part here? No, it doesn't do anything. Not yet. This will be part of our application in the next couple of videos, but I wanted to show you this line because most tutorials, they just throw a lot of lines of code and sometimes you don't even use them for anything. So I hope that this was understood. To do a simple test, let's insert a new user from post. Let's go to the form that we had here, the body from data. Let's insert X and XX, send it. The user was created. Let's go to get and send again. And now we have the X and then the XX is the result that we got, right? Because we're using find. So just so you see it right there, that's also the BBB and XX. All right, I think this is good enough for this video. In the next video, we'll show you how we can create read. It's going to be the update. In this video, we'll show you how to update a document using Python Flask and MongoDB. So let's hit to VS Code. In the previous videos, I have connected to the database and I have shown you how to create and read elements or documents. Let's create a new route. It doesn't matter where you do it, you can do it any way you want. I will just do it right there. Let's create the route app.route, and this is going to allow us to update a user. So we'll create the path users, and then I'm going to pass the ID of the user that I want to update. This is how you retrieve a variable via the URL, or how you expect to get a variable. The methods in this case will be not get, not post. We're going to use patch. You could also use put if you want it. Let's create a function, call it update user. And since we expect to get ID, we're going to write ID in there. If this was called IDX, then you should put IDX right there. So this will be the ID variable. To test it, the first thing we're going to do, we're just going to return whatever ID we pass back to the client. Let's save it. Let's go to Postman, and let's create a new route. This is going to be a patch. It's going to be for localhost users, and I will pass 1. That will be the ID that I want to pass. Therefore, we get 1 back. If we pass 10, we get 10 back. Back to this code. Now that we have the return ID, we always need to do a try and an except. We're going to get an exception as EX. If something goes wrong, I will do this with the stars now. I will print 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. And then I will just duplicate this so it's easier for us to spot the exception if we get there. Let me just do it like so. But this will be working, the exception will run in the terminal, so it will be displayed right here. We also need to respond back to the user, to the client with some data. For now, we just copy this return, and then I will paste it right there. I will make a few changes to it. I think that will be indented correctly. We're not going to send ID back, and this will do. So we just send a message, and this will be system under, and this is going to update, so cannot update. Sorry, cannot update. And this is not going to be a 200 because that's a success message. I will just send a 500 because this is an exception. So something pretty bad went in the system, and that's why you send a 500, which is an internal server error. You just don't want to display that to the user, so you say something else. So in the try, we're going to try to update the user. So we're going to use the DB response so you can see what this contains. And this will be the database.users, that's the collection, and we're going to update one user. The user that we want to update takes 2 arguments. The first argument is what we are searching for. So we're going to be searching for the user with ID and the ID, and here comes the line that I showed you in the previous video. The ID is an object ID, so that's why we need this line. Whenever we refer to the object ID, we need this import. So we get back to the ID, and then we say that the ID is going to be the object ID that we imported, and it will be the ID that we pass via the URL. So that is the object that we want to update. That's the first argument. The second argument is what we want to update it with. For the sake of simplicity, I will just say that we are going to set, that will be the key, and the value, which is a JSON object. So we're going to set the name to whatever values we pass via the form. So we say request.form, and then we're going to pass a name. This will update the document, and we're going to send a response back to the user. But before we send anything, let's look at this DB response and the data that it contains. For ATTR, you can call this anything you want. In dir DB response, we are going to print ATTR. And for us to be able to see it, how about if we just do something like this? Let's do a f string. So we're going to pass the attr, and I'm just going to surround this with a few stars. Nothing fancy, just that. And we're also going to respond back to the client. So we just copy this return. I will paste it. The indentation has to be correct. I think this will be correct. So we're going to send the response, and for now the message will say user updated, and I will tell you a little bit more about it. So for now, let's just save it. The status will be 200, and we save it again. Let's go to Postman. We're going to create a new request. It's going to be a patch. We're going to point to localhost, users, and we need the ID of a user that exists in our system. In this case, I will select the ID for B, copy it. In the patch, which is the update, I will pass the ID, and we also need to go to the body. In the form data, we're going to pass the name that will be A. Remember, the actual name is B, so I'm going to try to change it to A. Send. The user has been updated. Let's check if that's true. We get to the get route. It says A. You can see we have B and A. That's weird. I was sure that I changed the name B to A, not X to A. Let's check it. The ID is 97F, and the ID is 97F. All right. Yeah, I copied the wrong ID. So this is working fine. Just to make sure that this is fully working, I will copy this ID now, which is B. I will paste it. And I'm going to change the name. Remember, it was B. We're going to change it to C. Send. The user has been updated. We send the request, and then we get the letter C and the letter A. So the update is working fine, but this is not good enough for us, because sometimes it will update the document and sometimes it will not. Imagine that you want to update C to C on this ID. It didn't really update anything. So I'll show you how we solve that. If we look at this attribute in the response, let's see what we got here. These are all the options that we have. And you can see that we have one option that says modify count, and that's what we want to check. If it has been modified, we're going to say user updated. And if it didn't modify anything, we're just going to say, well, nothing updated, because we didn't need to update anything. So let's do that. Modify count is what we need to use. I will just copy this, Control C, and I'm going to comment this out, because now we know what we need to use. And then I will just do an if statement. If db response dot modify count equals 1, if so, I'm going to return this nice response. I will just do it like this, indented one time. So the message, the user has been updated, and that is if it was 1, or else if it's not 1. Or else we're going to return, I will just copy the return message and indent it correctly. I will just response. Actually, these are 200, that's correct, and this is also 200, that's correct. But then I will just say that nothing to update. Even though it found the user, nothing needed to be updated. Save it again. Now let's go to Postman. I'm going to, in the patch, I'm going to change this ID to C, which was the previous change, so nothing should change. Send. Nothing to update. If I say I'm going to change it to D, Then we get user updated. Check it here. We get the D. So this is how you solve the if else. I'm not sure if you even need this else because this if should return it. I haven't tested this. Let me just do it for now. Delete the else, indent one time to the left. Save it. Not sure about this, but makes some sense. I will D on this ID, which was previously changed, send, nothing to update, and now we'll set it back to B, send, user updated. So this is working fine. This is how you can modify a user, and this is how you can check what the response contains. In the next video, I will show you how we delete a user. In this video, I will show you how to delete a user from a Mongo collection using Python and Flask. Let's go to VS Code and have the terminal open. We're going to create a new route. By the way, don't forget to subscribe and get notifications. If you have come to this video directly, look at the video description. There are the previous videos described there. Let's create the last delete route there. It doesn't matter where you place it. So let's create a route, and this is going to be a users, and we are going to pass the ID of the user that we want to delete. The methods, it's going to be just one, the delete methods. Let's create a function, def delete user. The user that we want to delete will be contained in this ID, therefore we pass the ID right there. Try catch again, try except in this case, and then we're going to get the exception as EX. Same as I did before, I'm just going to print some stars, just in case that we get to the exception so we can easily identify these stars. The print only works in the terminal, but we always need to send some response or a response back to the client. So I will copy this response and then I will paste it right there for the exception. Sorry, cannot update. This will be sorry, cannot delete a user. And user, it doesn't matter what you put there. And this is going to be a critical error in the server. That's why I sent a status of 500. In the try, we're going to try to delete it. For now, let's just do a test. Let's just response again. I will copy this response. I will paste it right there. And I'm going to send a 200. The message will say user deleted. Save it. Let's go to Postman and let's create a new request. It's going to be a delete localhost /users1. Let's see if we get the response back. No, I have actually a bug. You can see that my terminal is not running correctly. Method is not an argument. Perfect. Nice bug. Let's fix it. The API, the documentation says methods. Save it, rerun it. Server is running fine. Let's go to Postman and send the request. Now you can say that it says user deleted. Let's pass this ID in the message so we know which user has been deleted. Message user deleted, and the ID is going to be the ID that we will pass inside this F string. So we're just going to pass the ID right there. Save it. Send the request 1. If it was 5, we get 5. Check. So the user is not really deleted, but for now we have this done correctly. In the try, we're going to get a response from the database, and we're going to delete one user. So from the database, point to the users collection and delete one user. So which user do we want to delete? We want to delete the user which has the ID. Remember that this is the Mongo way to describe an ID with the underscore in front of it. And we need to point to the object ID. Remember a few videos I show you that this line was needed because Mongo works with the ID as an object, and that's why you need to import this object ID. Let's go back to the delete route. And now in the ID, we are going to say that the object ID is going to be the ID that we pass via the URL. In the response from the database, we are going to, before we continue, let's do what I always show you. Let's do a form, attr, db response, and in dir db response, we're going to print, and just for us to easily identify the attribute, we're going to see 3 stars, attr, 3 stars again. Save it. Let's go to Postman again, and let's send it. Sorry, cannot delete user. This is quite nice. Let's check VS Code again. I don't have that message in the try. I do have the message in the exception. And that's quite nice that we got there, because now I can look at this and try to see what the exception is. 5 is not a valid object ID. And that is because Mongo knows how the IDs are created, and this is not a Mongo ID. It knows it automatically. It must be 12-byte input or 24 characters string, correct. So Mongo is detecting that, and that's why we get to the exception right away. I think this was really nice to see happening, so you understand the purpose of the exception. So now, if I go to the get users, I'm going to copy this ID. I'm going to go to the delete route. I'm going to pass the valid ID, send. And now it's trying to do something. Let's see if I just click enter there. It was like hooked there because I didn't press enter in the terminal. It says the user has been deleted. Let's see if that's true. Let's look at this E8F. EF8, it's gone. So it was deleted. Let's delete this one. Copy, paste. User deleted. If we go and check the users, we have an empty array. So this is how you can check if a user has been deleted. But there could be situations in which the ID is valid, but no user was deleted. Let's do that. Let's create a new user via post, send, check the users. That's the user. I'm going to take this. I'm going to paste it there, and I will make a change. Instead of the letter A, I will do a B. It doesn't exist. I send, and it says user deleted. But that's not really true. The user was never deleted. So if we go and look at this code, it says that I have to be able to delete the user, and then I will just return this response. But now I need to check if actually the user was deleted or not. If we look at the variable db response, we can see that we have a deleted count. That's what we need to use. I copy that, comment this out, and I'm just going to do an if statement. If db response dot deleted count equals 1, just as I did before. If this is true, I will send a message saying that the user was deleted. So I will just copy this response. We don't need these lines for now. I guess you have copied that. So I will just take the response, indent it, and I will make this message saying that the user was deleted. The ID was the ID. And that's fine because the deleted count is 1. Or else, I don't need to write an else. I showed you that in the previous video. I will just copy this return and paste it right there. If a user was not deleted, I can just say user not found, and then I will just pass ID again. Obviously, this looks a lot of lines of code, but you can just do this in one line. I'm not doing this because I'm trying to show you as much code as possible. But if this was just one line, it will look quite nice. Quite simple, actually. That will be the return, and this will be the next return. So the code looks very clean, right? So save it. I'm going to go to Postman. I'm going to try to delete the user that ends with B. It does not exist. User not found with this ID. And then I will change it to A, the ID, send it, and the user was deleted. If this is true, the user should be gone. And it is gone. All right. Via this video series, I have shown you how to create, read, update, delete, and set up all these applications. I hope you like these videos and you subscribe and get notifications. Once again, it's not just to be notified about these videos because you have obviously watched them, but it is when an update comes into place, I will make the new videos and you will always be updated. Thank you for watching.